ladies and gentlemen. Um, Welcome back to Horror Analysis with me, Drew. Second time I'm doing this video, but this time it's going to be good. Today we're continuing with Horror Anthropology, and we are getting close to the end. I think this is the second to last or third to last video. And we're on to Oceania. Which is, of course, Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Micronesia, Polynesia, Micronesia, the Marshall Islands, Kiribati, Fiji, Tonga, Vanuatu's in there, Solomon Islands, etc., etc. We only have two to worry about because only Australia and New Zealand have any horror movies from this area, this region. I don't even think... I think there's might be one or two even fantasy type movies from folklore in the Micronesia area, and the supernatural creature is benign or benevolent, so not an object of horror. So we'll be going over New Zealand and Australia. At first I was assuming that these would be mixed in with British and American because, the language is the same, of course. But Americans and, well, I can't speak for British, but Americans for sure don't really get a lot of these movies. Maybe the Brits might be lucky to get a couple. Out of the ones on here, I own two. I could get 3 more, 4 more, maybe. Well, 4 and a bit more. But most of them aren't available in the U.S., except for through special orders, of course. And some of them looked really cool. Some of them were really cool. The ones I own are really cool. And the other ones are going to be really cool as well. You would think that New Zealand would have less than Australia, but I actually found that New Zealand had more. So we're going to actually start with New Zealand. Another thing, New Zealand, I have the list here chronologically, and Australia, I have the list alphabetically. I don't know how that happened in my researching, but that's how it went down. But anyway, that's how it goes. New Zealand. So the first New Zealand film I actually found out in my research was kind of cool. It goes back to one of our friends, George Millie, who did the Haunted Castle, the 13-minute, first horror movie in France. And his brother, Gaston Millie, went to America to sort of distribute George's movies, and then went to New Zealand to distribute George's movies, and filmed some more along the way in these places. The first New Zealand film was in 1913 by Gaston Millie. It wasn't a horror movie, but it was his brother, which is kind of brother of the first horror movie guy. That's really good. Early New Zealand horror movies, or early New Zealand movies at all, don't exist anymore because the first way of making film just fell apart in that climate. It's too warm. The actual film didn't hold up. So all of these films are lost films. But the horror stuff really didn't get started till the 80s in New Zealand, the 70s in Australia. And, well, actually, let's see. Mm-hmm. Well, the 70s, right? We have one writer out of both of these countries, and it is New Zealand. A horror writer, or a horror-ish writer, or a dark comedy, horror-ish, killer, thriller thing. Um, he did a mix of things with weird sexual angst in there as well. His name is, what is his name? His name is Ronald Hugh Morrison. New Zealand writer. He wrote 4 books. All of them were turned into movies. One of them certainly isn't considered to be a horror movie in the least bit. The other 3 are sort of horror comedy-ish things. And only one I was able to find a preview for. And that's called The Predicament. It's actually got one of the guys from the Flight of the Conchords is one of the stars in the movie. And the preview looks actually really cool. So much so that I really want to actually get a hold of this guy's books, because they seem pretty cool. So the books were the horror ones anyway, were The Predicament, The Scarecrow, and Pallet on the Floor, which mix in horror comedy. They're all made into movies. The Scarecrow, I couldn't find a preview for. And I think I only found the movie in German, but it was the full movie, or the preview was in German or something. I was lost. Pallet on the Floor, I couldn't find a preview for, because Pallet on the Floor is a very famous blues song. So even if I type in Pallet on the Floor 1986, which is the year it was released, I get, blues musicians in 1986 covering this blues song, or blues musicians covering this blues song, and the year just doesn't matter. That's hot stuff. Steep a bit more. Got some tea here. I'm enjoying. Well, it's a little warm, but I'm still enjoying it. Oh, did I get that one? Yeah, so Ronald Hugh Morrison died in the early 80s, I believe. And actually, in 2010 was the last movie The Predicament was made into a preview. Was made into a movie. Images. Nope. Oh, maybe that one. Let me try this one. Sorry, I'm just making a picture. Grabbing a picture for one of these. No, not there. Get out of there. Alright. For one of the other movies that I forgot to get a picture for. The other person we want to talk about a lot in this area is Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson is most well known, of course, for doing the Lord of the Rings films, and now the Hobbit films. I'm not a Hobbit fan, or a Lord of the Rings fan, or a Tolkien fan for that matter. So I actually watched all 3 of the movies and got through them. That's about as much as I can say. But I will also say that the dark parts in those movies, like the magnification spider monster, is pretty creepy. Or I'm gonna have a bunch of fanboys yell at me, but the guys with the cloaks that are dark and scary and monstery, pretty scary stuff. So Peter Jackson actually has quite a few films. Since he's New Zealand, he actually acts in a few of them too, or plays a role in a few of them. The first one being Bad Taste, I think was the earliest one. Going out of order. Before we get to Peter Jackson, let's go chronologically because that's where we're going. The first film in New Zealand. Yeah, the first film in New Zealand that is one of the horror movies is this horror comedy or horror drama called The Scarecrow by Ronald Hugh Morrison. It was 1982. That was the first one that was made into a movie. The second horror film was The Lost Tribes. I couldn't find any information on that because if you type in Lost Tribes in YouTube, you get lots of National Geographic thing about lost tribes and National Geographic-y type stuff. The next one was Mr. Wrong. That's an awful picture. Oh well. I tried to get a picture of it on the fly, and it didn't work too well. Mr. Wrong was 1985. Something I saw the preview. The preview looked pretty interesting. Something along the lines of a woman picks up hitchhikers that may be ghosts and may be after her because the car is attached to these dead people, or these she keeps picking up the same ones, and it's Hitchcockian and all this stuff. It seemed pretty cool. That picture did not do it much justice, unfortunately. There we go. Then we have another Ronald Hugh Morrison. I keep wanting to say George Méliès, and that's the French guy. Ronald Hugh Morrison book, The Pallet on the Floor, was 1986, but I can't find a video preview of that because Pallet on the Floor is a very famous blues song, apparently. Then we come to Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson's first one was Bad Taste, 1987. There it is. I think actually that character is Peter Jackson, the director and the actor. He's the actor of that character, if I remember correctly. It's a comedy-ish horror. It's cannibal-y, alien-y, or mutant-y. The guy, I don't know why I'm pointing at it. It's this mutant-y cannibal stuff. And this is Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson we're talking about here. Peter Jackson also had another Muppet type thing. You can see, of course, that this is Muppety. It was a dark comedy, like the anti-Muppets, the not feel-good Muppets. I forget what it was called. I should have had actually written it down. I don't remember what it's called, but I could probably look it up. Peter Jackson is actually started off in this dark comedy or horror area. What's Peter Jackson Muppets? That's a good Google search. Meet the Feebles is the name of the Feebles. The Muppety thing. Peter Jackson started off in this horror comedy type thing. He's actually stayed in it quite a bit. With The Lord of the Rings is sort of his departure away from it. The next one, of course, is 1992's Brain Dead, which in America inexplicably is called Dead Alive. I'm sure most people have seen this in the video store. Pick it up. It's fantastic. I think it cost me $7. Well worth it. It's it's good in so many ways, but it's interesting in many ways because it's rare to have a period piece that's a zombie piece. Most zombie pieces, of course, are zombie um, apocalypse, or zombie Armageddon, or end of the world zombies. Um, this one, it was filmed in the '90s, early '90s, but it takes place in like the '50s or '60s, which is pretty weird. You don't see this sort of thing because if it takes place in the '50s or '60s, the zombie threat must have been contained or eliminated because there's no zombies nowadays. That's why there's not more of them. I can see why there's not more of them, but I'm really glad that this one is there, and it's for scariness. I don't know. It's got some moments. It's got some frightening moments. Not it's gory as fuck, actually. Oh, sorry. Pardon me. It's got a lot of blood. It's got a lot of guts, but the guts are in a humorous way. It's got some grow and it's got some jump out at you. It's not terror, in Stephen King's sense of the word. If there were a dearth, if there were a lot of these zombie period pieces, we wouldn't feel any fear for them, for the characters. And as I've said a bunch of times, by extension, if you fear for the characters, you fear it burns into you. Fear for yourself. You don't have that fear because you know that they're going to make it through because the zombie apocalypse didn't happen. It's just a zombie outbreak, isolated outbreak, and contained and eradicated. Because there's no zombies nowadays if it's a period piece. Unless it was an alternative reality. I think there's actually another alternative reality coming up with vampires. But for Peter Jackson's one, Brain Dead or Dead Alive, it's good. It's not something you'd see every day. It's pretty hilarious. There's some parts that are completely hilarious. And, it's interesting stuff. Anyway, back to Peter Jackson. Another Peter Jackson. The next Peter Jackson would be The Frighteners. Which takes place in the U.S. That's not a great picture. I couldn't really find a great picture of it. But you get that's the poster for it. This is actually, I think, Michael J. Fox's last movie as well. Also a horror comedy, a ghost horror comedy. Jake Busey is the Grim Reaper serial killer. Jake Busey is the serial killer who takes on the powers of the Grim Reaper and kills both people and ghosts. And Michael J. Fox is the guy who can talk to ghosts, the ghost whisperer type guy, and has to stop the serial killer Grim Reaper guy. And it's a comedy. It's ridiculous enough that if it wasn't a comedy, it would be horrible. But since it is a comedy, it's perfectly acceptable. Oh yeah, and I'm just going to skip over the other ones to... Ooh, I forgot about that one. yeah, so I'm going to skip over this one real quick to go to King Kong. Of course, Peter Jackson as well. Um, Not necessarily a horror comedy, but it's got Jack Black in it, and he's known as a comedic character actor. Um, there we go. Save images. Alright, get rid of you real quick. I forgot about this guy too. Plus. So, yeah, King Kong, of course, magnification monster. Where am I at? Are you kidding me? Oh, here we go. Okay, yeah, so of course King Kong's magnification monster. Not even monster. Magnification creature. He doesn't strike anybody as a monster anymore. Not even a horror movie, really. At the best King Kong movie isn't even a horror movie. But, it's one of those people who are fans of the horror genre are usually fans of King Kong movies. Yeah, so King Kong, Peter Jackson again. We'll get through that. I'm going to grab this one. The next one down the list is The Ugly. It's, well, as the picture says, a Silence of the Lambs and Seven type movie. A psychiatrist tries to analyze a serial killer. Like, why do you kill? Find out why he kills all these people. And, it's one of those, he tries to get into her head while she's trying to get into his head sort of things. And then it throws in, like, these weird demon ghost things that are the reason he kills, and we're not sure if they're real or not. From what I got from the preview, anyway. Looked interesting, looked gory, and you see that razor blade? That's the L. I have a real issue with knives, especially throat cutting. It just creeps me up way too much. Like, more than ghosts. Knife things. Even action movies, if someone's getting his throat sliced, I can't watch it. I wimp out. So I don't know if I could handle the movie, just because that my deal. But it looked interesting, for sure. So continuing on with New Zealand films, I just grabbed the picture for this one. Again, with a crappy picture. This is called The Irrefutable Truth About Demons. This is an awful picture. And the guy at the bottom there in the middle is Carl Urban, who, of course... Get out of here. Gross picture. This is made in 2000. It was... Carl Urban's a New Zealand actor who was... in Doom. He's been in a couple of action movies in America now. He was in this movie, which is essentially a bunch of demons trying to take over. That's what I was after. John Rhys Davis. Okay. And the guy's fighting him. It looked pretty run-of-the-mill. Some of the special effects look good, especially for, well, maybe not for 2000, but, 2000, pretty on par special effects. Creative special effects, I suppose. Okay, so I have more on the list. The locals, which I couldn't find any information on. If you try typing the locals, even the locals 2003 into YouTube, you don't come up with anything. Um, King Kong was 2005. I mentioned that already. The perfect creature was 2007. That's this one here. Um, alternate reality. As I mentioned before, alternate reality where men and vampires live together, and essentially vampires are the priests of in the church, and they serve mankind and in a clergy fashion. And people who are coming into church, instead of giving monetary donations, give a little cut and bleed into the offering plate for the priest to sup on later. And apparently, the legend goes that if a vampire and a human have a child, it will be a perfect creature. So one of the rogue priest vampire guys starts killing a bunch of people and mating with women to try to create a perfect child. That's what the impression I got. And on top of that is sort of diesel punk, steampunk type background, hidden like the zeppelins and airships and stuff in the background, from if I remember correctly. There was another one, Ferryman. The Ferryman, which was 2007. John Rhys Davis is the actor on it, and that seemed to be an interesting little mix of body switching. I think I talked about body switching before in fission monsters. So apparently the concept in this is the guy jumps from body to body with the use of this sacrificial knife. So he stabs somebody and he gets switched into that guy's body. And the guy switches into his body, who is assuming dying. Which one assumes is dying. And I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, and the creature is picked up by this boat after a shipwreck or something, and starts going through switching bodies to get into this other guy. So, and then it's fought through that until Charon comes and collects him because he's cheating death. It seemed odd. It seemed interesting. I did have, kind of a interesting phase of really being into those kind of movies. So maybe I'll go and see if I can find more information on that one. When I was talking about, I think I did 3 videos on fission creatures. So it's kind of interesting to me. So as a subgenre. 2007 also has one of my favorite horror comedies, Black Sheep. Also, I got this for $7. Definitely worth it. It's, genetically engineered sheep. They go too far in their genetic engineering, so when a sheep bites a person, they become a were-sheep. A hulking monster of horrible. And then the sheeps also tear people apart and, feed on their entrails and stuff. Also taking place in the hills and sheep farms of New Zealand. Fantastic movie. It's hilarious. It doesn't pull any punches. It's certainly gross at times. And hilarious and not scary, but good. If you're a horror fan, you'll like Black Sheep, I think. Um, 2007 also has this one called Down by the Riverside. Good luck trying to find a preview for a movie called Down by the Riverside because, of course, it's a very famous song. And I was really interested in looking at it because it was called noir horror. Now that's a subgenre that should happen. Noir horror. But of course I can't find any information on it because it's called Down by the Riverside, which is a very famous song and very covered by pretty much any gospel group ever. So, nothing. 2007 also has a movie called Susie. I couldn't find any information on that. Wikipedia didn't have any information on it, and besides saying that the movie existed, and type in Susie into YouTube, and you're going to have a bad time. Last of the Living. This is a good zombie comedy type one. The premise being that the zombie apocalypse happens, and the four guys that think they're the last four guys on Earth start living in mansions and playing video games all day. And then they're out, raiding a supermarket or whatever, and they find a girl who's alive. So of course the last four bachelors on the planet find the last living, or in the area, find the last living girl in the area, and they all fall in love with her. And they're all slackers, but she's trying to come up with a cure, so they have to help her come up with the cure. It's zombie horror comedy. 2008 for that one. 2011, The Devil's Rock, no information. 2012, The Compound, no information. So some of these are just list. Diagnosis Death, starring both members of Flight of the Conchords and the guy who plays the manager in the show Flight of the Conchords. Obviously a horror comedy. It seemed like the premise was these patients are in for testing a cure for whatever disease, and the side effect of the cure is they start seeing ghosts, or they're in the hospital room, and they see all the people who died in the hospital room before they moved in. Here we go. And then other starts happening. The ghosts start coming after them. It actually didn't look like it was pulling many punches either. It was a horror comedy in the true sense of the word. Like, it's not a farce. It looks like it's going to have some horrific elements to it. There was 1993, this movie called Jack Be Nimble. This is going to come up. Both New Zealand and Australia are going to have a couple of weird traits. Some things that pop up over and over again. One is car chases and Armageddon-y, like Carmageddon-y stuff. People trying to run people off the road to kill them. Seems to pop up over and over again. Another one is Psycho Hillbillies. The hills have eyes, that sort of thing. And then the other one is Psycho Hillbillies area, the country with not much going on. the inaccessible area where psycho hillbillies rule, where they are in control. Jack Be Nimble. The basis seemed to be there's a girl and a guy in an orphanage, and the girl is adopted by a nice family, and the guy is adopted by a dick family, and the guy is tortured by the family and sort of it's the psycho hillbillies. He's made to live with the psycho hillbillies and not treated well, and the psycho hillbillies do bad things to people when they get a chance to, stuff. And then the girl and the guy meet up again when they're in their 20s and fall in love, and like you knew they would, because they knew each other from whatever. And the psycho hillbillies won't let the guy go. And there's, I don't know, these four women in the corner. You can see the corner of it. I don't know if they're ghosts or they're actually the family members. They're after him, and then the father, the adopted father, tries to run him off the road in his car, and that sort of stuff. And blackmail is another thing that pops in these stories quite a bit. Oh, actually, my back's hurting.
I have to adjust. Sorry, folks. Blackmail. The last one, of course, is the predicament, which I talked about before. The Ronald Hugh Morrison with one of the guys, Jermaine from Flight of the Conchords, is in that. And that was about blackmailing a killer to get money, and then it turns around and goes sideways because the killer starts going after the blackmailers. There's a lot of that going on in Australia and New Zealand. Not in Jack Be Nimble. I don't think there's any blackmail in that one, but it's another theme that seems to pop up a lot. It's common. I think that's New Zealand taken care of. Let's switch on over to Australia. The first one in Australia, of course, is a blackmail. These kids find out a guy's killing people. They choose to blackmail him, and then it backfires on the heroes, the blackmailers, because the serial killer just targets them. It's called Acolytes. Came out in 2008. The preview looked alright, but I don't know if there's anything to write home about on that one. Allison's birthday was 1981. It was universally panned from everything I seemed to find about it. I couldn't find the preview for it because Allison's birthday, you find about a bunch of home videos about a person named Allison. That's the tea done. Alright. Allison's birthday, the basis seemed to be a Ouija board. The girl playing with a Ouija board says, "Don't go here on your 18th birthday because bad stuff will happen." And then she goes there on her 18th birthday and bad stuff happens. Her grandparents try to kill her or something. Aunt and uncle try to kill her or something along those lines. 2007, Blackwater. Something you would expect in Australia would be mutant or magnification monsters of crocodiles. I'm being stereotypical here. I apologize, but that's not too far of a stretch. That this based on true events,
horror in the Northern Territory where these guys go out on a river and a crocodile starts going after them. Um, Blood Moon, which I don't have any information on other than it was a slasher movie in the 70s, and sorry, in the 90s. Um, do I have these in alphabetical order? I don't think I do. Yeah, I do. I just haven't gotten to one yet. Oh yeah, so the first one that I had here was Body Melt. Now, after this video, go and watch a preview for Body Melt. This looks fantastic. Here's the poster for it. It's essentially a guy takes drugs and stuff happens to him. You know, first he starts freaking out, and then his body starts mutating, and then it gets worse and worse from there. I have a picture from that. That looks fantastic. There seem to be a lot of these kind of pictures. The special effects on this is great. That's cool. I don't know how much. I don't know if it's just the music was done by this odd Australian band, or part of the story was done by them as well. But there's this band called Tisk Tisk Tisk, who seems to be involved with Body Melt. But they don't call themselves Tisk Tisk Tisk. They call themselves this Arrow this way, arrow up, and then arrow this way again. Actually, I'm doing a mirror. So arrow this way, arrow up, arrow this way. Tisk Tisk Tisk. I don't know why they call themselves that, but they seem to be involved with the soundtrack, if nothing else, of this Body Melt. And this looks really cool. This picture is just fantastic. I want to put this as my screensaver. Let's see. Okay, so after Blood Moon, what's this guy's name? I have to look this guy up real quick. So after Blood Moon, we had come to. I can't. Here we go. After Blood Moon, we come to a pretty famous director in Australia. Pardon me. Peter Weir. Peter Weir is pretty famous for doing dramas, he did The Witness in '87. He was famous for Dead Poet Society, Master and Commander, Far Side of the World, The Truman Show, and Green Card was one of his too. I think I've seen all those. And they're not a director you would expect to do a horror movie, and not a director that you expect to do a weird horror movie either. But his first, of course, they always start with the directorial debut, was this movie called, I think I have the picture for it, The Cars That Ate Paris. Not Paris, France, it's Paris, Australia. It's this Carmageddon stuff. You see this Volkswagen Beetle with the spikes all over it, and there's cars with teeth on them. So it's a mix of really weird stuff. Basically, the premise is you go to this town of Paris and you don't get out. The kids in their hot rods run you off the road, and you're sent to the hospital there where they do live dissections on you. and you can't escape. You're stuck. And Paris is out in the boonies of Australia apparently too. So you're stuck, and it's a hellish existence. And all the locals are insane or creepy in some weird way. They're the kids with their cars, or they're the adults that are just strange and running the hospital and running other things and still being weird. Yeah, so weird stuff. Yeah, Peter Weir, not what I was expecting to pop up on the list. I didn't know Peter Weir's name. I knew, of course, the movies, Truman Show, and you know, um, Dead Poets Society, Robin Williams and Jim Carrey, and even Green Card. That was Gerard Depardieu, and Harrison Ford was in Witness in the '80s. What was the other one? Master and Commander, Russell Crowe, which was 2000s or late '90s. I wasn't expecting him to have a horror movie under his belt, but he does, and it's cool. A lot of these, I'm just going to tell you, hey, check out the preview on these. These are cool. Next one down, Damned by Dawn. Actually, hold on. Cut, which was 2000. Horror comedy. It had Molly Ringwald and Kylie Minogue in it. They do. The premise is they make a. Kylie Minogue is the director and Molly Ringwald's the star, and they make a slasher movie, but they don't finish it because the person who plays the slasher turns into a slasher or something along those lines, and kills people. 20 years later, students want to finish the movie, but the movie's cursed. They get Molly Ringwald's character to be in the movie again, but things go sideways again because death starts happening again. It seemed sort of typical. It seemed sort of low budget as well. It seemed like a typical 90s slasher teen movie, which it kind of was. But those are cool movies many times. So Cut, cause get it, it's a movie Cut. Right. So Damned by Dawn. Damned by Dawn is a banshee movie, not a horror, not a monster you see all that often. 2009 it came out. The girl comes home because her grandmother's gonna die soon, and the grandmother says something along the lines of, "The banshee's gonna come for me, and I'll die." And when the banshee comes and she cries out for the dead start rising, and attacking the family, and the stuff goes sideways. I've said that a couple times today. Why am I saying stuff goes sideways? And horror happens, I guess is the term for it. Preview looked okay. It looked pretty typical. The fact that it's a banshee makes it a little bit more interesting for me, but otherwise it looks like a standard run-of-the-mill ghost movie or zombie coming back from the dead movie. Dying Breed, 2008. I think this was Tasmanian cannibals. Again, we're talking about psycho hillbillies again. In this little village that tries to stay hidden because they're cannibals, and they eat people whenever they get a chance. And then people trying to find film a documentary on Tasmanian tiger find the village and start getting eaten. Houseboat Horror, 1989, is a slasher movie. The three slasher movies from Australia, I didn't find any information on. The other one being Slaughtered in 2009, which is a slasher in a pub. Some not slasher stuff, typical slasher stuff. Then we come to what might be the worst movie out of this list, possibly, probably. The Howling 3. The Marsupials. Now, I'm a werewolf fan, as I've mentioned about a billion times before. The Howling, 1981, Joe Dante. Fantastic. Second only to, American Werewolf in London for that early 80s werewolf movie. And it came out in the same year, unfortunately, so bad luck for The Howling. It always gets second place to American Werewolf. But it's a good movie. The Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf, with Christopher Lee as the Van Helsing type character. It's pretty bad. It's okay. If you're a werewolf fan, I think you'll like Howling 2. If you're a horror fan, I don't think you will like Howling 2. You have to really like werewolves to be able to accept Howling 2. Howling 3 was the Marsupials. An American werewolf goes to Australia, and Australian werewolves who are marsupials they meet up, and then there's guys who fall in love with both of the women, and there's a birth scene when he impregnates the marsupial, where a little baby crawls out and crawls up to the pouch on the werewolf and crawls in to the pouch on the werewolf. It's universally panned. If you want to laugh, you can watch the preview. It's pretty bad stuff. It's marsupials. Marsupial werewolves. I don't know what else to say about The Howling 3. The Howling series did not get better after that. I don't know what happened to Howling 4, but I have Howling 5 and 6. I've watched one of these, but I can't even remember which one. I watched Howling 5. The Rebirth. It was awful. I don't even think I watched Howling 6. I might have. I gotta find Howling 4, and I guess I should watch Howling 3 as well at some point. But, oh my goodness. Yeah. Next one on the list is The Loved Ones, which seemed typical for the most part. It's a girl stalker stalking a boy, that popular boy, kidnapping him, making him go to prom in her basement or whatever, prom in her living room with the disco ball and paper crowns for her being the prom queen, and nailing his feet to the floor, which seemed interesting. It looked pretty typical, with the exception of what she does to the boys that aren't her Prince Charming, which is lobotomize them with boiling water. That seemed cool. and then keeping the lobotomized subhuman boys now in the basement. Um, it was the preview looks the preview's worth watching. I'm not sure if the movie is. The movie's got pretty bad reviews, but the preview's worth watching. Then you can choose for yourself. See, another one just for the list. I have a movie called Next of Kin, 1982. I have no idea what it's about. Night of Fear is the next one on the list. This looks interesting because it came out 2 years before Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and apparently is essentially Texas Chainsaw Massacre before Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out. That's how it was advertised on Wikipedia. I went and watched the preview. It seemed similar, but not so similar that I would make that recommendation. There is a scene where a bunch of rats came out of the, rats came out and started eating the people, Willard style, or Night Shift. No, not Night Shift. Graveyard Shift. Graveyard Shift style. Lost my train of thought again. Sorry, folks. Yes, but otherwise, again, crazies in the woods or crazies in the middle of nowhere. The house has a slaughterhouse in it. Psycho family, psycho hillbillies, sort of thing. There's one called The Open Door, which I thought was interesting until I saw the preview for it. It's essentially about a girl who calls into a secret radio show that only happens on the full moon and makes a wish to the radio show, and then her wishes come true in the worst possible way. Like, she wishes for her parents to leave her alone, so bad stuff starts happening to her parents. She wishes for her friends to not be so stupid, so bad stuff starts happening to her friends. She wishes for her boyfriend to not cheat on her, so bad stuff starts happening to the boyfriend. It looked, when I was like, man, this looks interesting. Then I saw the preview and I was like, man, this looks really low budget. That's an incredibly low budget and not good. But, you can't have everything. Patrick, I have here. Patrick is sort of Carrie-esque. This was made actually in 1978, so this is the earliest horror movie out of the ones we're talking about at all. A guy in a coma is being treated with electroshock therapy and not treated very well, being sort of tortured by vindictive nurses. He's in a coma, and nurses are sort of messing with him, and doctors aren't treating him well and shocking him and being mean. So he develops ESP powers and starts killing them. This was actually redone also this is the 1978 version. I think 2009 it was redone. Also in Australia. Pardon me. Coma patient with ESP kills people, essentially. Okay. 1984 has a movie called Razorback, which is essentially a magnification boar, razorback, pig, wild boar type thing in the outback. Magnification monster. A larger-than-life boar starts killing people. 2010 has a movie called Road Train. I can't figure out the plot at all, but it seemed to involve car chases and hunting people down, running people off the road and killing them. But the plot seemed so messed up, even when I read it on Wikipedia, I couldn't understand it. 2007 Rogue, about another crocodile that's magnification larger than life and starts killing people. Let's see. Ooh, interesting. Here's Billy the Puppet. Yeah. Saw is done by an Australian director. Tan, I think is his name. I'm going to have to look it up. And Saw was actually done, the first Saw, not the Cary Elwes Saw, the first one, the one that no one knows about, it's a short movie, was done in Australia. Saw series. Who's the guy's? Saw director. That's one. James Wan. 2003, the first Saw, the first appearance of Billy the Puppet. Oops. The first appearance of Billy the Puppet was essentially just made as a short film to take around to movie studios to get the Saw film made, ending up in Lionsgate, of course. Great production company for horror movies at that time. Late 90s, early 2000s. Still is, actually. They come out with good stuff still. So the short film was essentially the bear trap, reverse bear trap thing where, Billy the Puppet sang play a game. And that's how they sold the movie, which became Saw, with Cary Elwes and Danny Glover, etc. Alright, so Thirst, 1979, was a vampire movie of some description. That's pretty much all I have. It's Thirst. It's a vampire movie. Well, you would call a vampire movie Thirst. Next, you have The Tunnel. It's this one here. This is one of those found footage genres, a la Blair Witch. A news team goes into a tunnel where there's a subterranean lake where these homeless people have been disappearing, and tries to do a story on what's going on. And the film footage that they have is what the horror movie is. It's ambiguous in the preview whether they made it back or not. I'm not really sure, to be honest. Some of them obviously didn't, but some of them might have. And then we're down to just a couple here. Oh yeah, Undead, also universally panned from what I saw. It's a zombie comedy. Zombies take over our town. The guys have to band together to fight off the zombie plague. And then aliens come in for some reason, I'm not sure if they're trying to save humanity or they started the plague in the first place. You see this chick has a triple-barreled shotgun, one on top of the other, and there's some ridiculous. Apparently, the guy's like doing upside down handgun tossing to each other, and it seemed a little ridiculous, comedic. Apparently, the comedy fell down on his face, but the preview looked good. Preview looked strange. Might be worth checking out. I like zombie comedies in general, so I might want to check it out. I think this might be available in the U.S., but I'm not sure. Well, it's Lionsgate, as you see there, so it's quite possible. Uninhabited, coming down to the end of the list now, since we're in alphabetical order. Uninhabited 2010. It looks very typical. It looks like, well, the premise is a guy and a girl go out to an island that's uninhabited for a week-long vacation or whatever to get away from it all, and they're being all romantic and whatever. Then they find out the uninhabited island's not uninhabited. They find a cabin where somebody's living or would have lived, and they think that someone's going through their stuff. Then they find out that there's a ghost of an Aborigine girl who was killed by the stalker guy stalking them, and the ghost starts taking over the living girl's body or mind or whatever, and communicating with the living girl. It looked like a decent preview up to a point. The point that it stopped being a decent preview and looked ridiculous was when the guy, after someone's been through your stuff and taking video of you while you were sleeping, the male lead, says the line, something along, "We're not going to let this guy ruin our vacation. We're not going to call for help." Like, if you paid to... That's only time that line would be said ever is in a horror movie. No one else is that stupid. If you paid to live on an uninhabited island and someone's going through your stuff and filming you while you sleep, you'd call at least to get the guy arrested, or to get your money back, or to register some sort of complaint. You wouldn't say, "We're not going to let this guy ruin our vacation. Let's ignore that we were filmed while we were sleeping, and that there seems to be bones and graves and stuff at this guy's cabin." No, you wouldn't do that. You would call for help. And, and then after a while, the next scene that the guy says something along the lines, "We got to get off this island." It's like, are you freaking kidding me? Can you not say such typical horror movie lines? It looked interesting up until that sort of stuff. That dialogue really killed it for me. I might be taking it out of context. Maybe the guy stole, when he was filming, the stalker guy might have stole the sat phone when he was filming you. But if he didn't, it's a really bad flaw. If he did, it's still a dumb thing to say, because he wouldn't have a chance to call for help anyway. You still wouldn't be saying, "We're not going to let this guy ruin our vacation." That's just stupid. Finally, the last movie on here is Wolf Creek, one that did make it to the United States and was quite popular. Again, serial killer, kidnapper, psycho redneck, out in the middle of nowhere. Again, chasing you down in cars and, car stuff, car breaking down. Can't escape because out in the middle of nowhere. The premise being that, the guy's car breaks down in the middle of the outback, and the tow truck comes along, and he's a nice guy, but he's not a nice guy. He's the killer, and he kidnaps you, and you can't escape. And if you do escape, there's millions of miles to hundreds of thousands of miles to reach civilization. Good luck. And he's got the only vehicle. So this Wolf Creek, pretty popular over here. I guess it did all right. Yeah. So that's Australia and New Zealand. Pretty impressive stuff. I wish more stuff would make it stateside. Oh God, my back. Oh. It is the same language as us. Just having, Black Sheep, Dead or Alive, King Kong, The Frighteners, Wolf Creek for Australian, Saw, and maybe The Undead. Not stuff that are. Those are the only ones that we have that are in regular, possible to get over here. I would like to see more. I would love to see the Cars That Ate Paris, and Body Melt. Looks fantastic. Predicament looks really good. As I said before, check out Predicament. That's the Morrison one, and that's got that Jermaine. I forget his last name, but from Flight of the Conchords. Again, also a blackmail thing. A lot of these look really good. Most of these look really good. And Frighteners doesn't really count either because it took place in the U.S. Michael J. Fox is an American. The story took place in the U.S. So anyway, Horror Anthropology will continue, folks. We're down to Americas now. We have South America and Central America and Mexico. I don't know if I'm going to do that all in one big video. This video took an hour and 12 minutes. That's a pretty impressive length video. I'm not sure if that's going to be one big huge video, or it's going to be two medium-sized videos, or two medium to big videos, depending on how much I find. Anyway, folks, my name's Drew. See you next time on Horror Analysis. Have a great night.